Hello there. Welcome to the training today. My name is Buck Hurlbut, and I will be your host for this episode. So, the task we have set in front of us today is to clone a product and bring over all of its custom pricing as well. And so, this is going to include creating the JavaScript, it's going to include creating the IQA, wiring the IQA into, or I should say, wiring the JavaScript into the IQA, and then presenting it in a dashboard form so that you can see all of your product codes and click a button and maybe fill in some blanks. So we're going to walk through this together, and I won't likely edit out mistakes just because if I make them, maybe as you're watching, you'll see that you should watch out for the same thing. So this should be a pretty raw training. Let's just step through this together. So let me kind of give you the guidelines on what I do as I'm trying to find a way to parameterize and throw into IQAs these API calls, all right? So the very first thing that I would do is look at the developer.imis.com to find the API calls that I want. Now, I'm going to save a little bit of time here because it took a little extra effort when I first did this to find these API calls, and I happen to have them. As a foundational piece, one of the things that I would suggest is that you find a good text editor that you can use to bounce things back and forth between. So for myself, I end up using Visual Studio Code, which is what I have right here in front of me. A good text editor is necessary to do this kind of work. So that's number one. Number two, I would find the get command for any of the API functions that we plan to use. So for example, we need to find the get command for the product code, and we want to work these things out in the I use Chrome. You can use whatever you like, but I happen to like Chrome, and I like the Chrome inspector. I happen to have right here in front of me, right this part right here, some code that we'll be using in a little bit that encapsulates the get feature and then posting it back as a brand new product code. But right in the middle here, I'm going to go grab this little piece of code right here. And I'm going to grab that, and we're going to convert this into something that we can use right now. So give me just a second here. So what I've got right here is a piece of code. We're going to modify it. This is pretty standard. So what I'm doing right now, you want to do the same thing when you're getting used to you're trying to figure out your various functions that you're planning on using. Console log is a very important feature. If you're not familiar with it, you should have that as a basic. That is a super basic JavaScript feature. And one more thing we need is an error. So let me go down here and grab one off of a lower piece of code. Right here, this catch, we'll use it. So I'll tell you what this code is saying. Let me make certain it's going to execute properly first. So we've got some variables up here at the very beginning that we're setting. This right here is looking at the logged in user, and it's getting the permission setting, the token, the verification token for the logged in user, so that it can submit it to the API and to prove that we're actually logged in. Get is the method. That means we're getting data out of the API. You also have put and post. There's also delete, but stay away from that one until you know what you're doing. But get is safe. You can use get whenever you want to, and you really don't have to worry about any repercussions. All right. And then we have this heading information that we have to have, and we can walk through that here in just a quick second. And then we've got this fetch, and the fetch is what actually calls the API. So what I want to do firstly is I want to run this to see if it gives me a response, and then what we'll do is we'll walk through the code and the response together. So don't feel overwhelmed at this point. We're going to cover this in layers. We're going to do a general observation, then we're going to come back and we're going to dig into these things piece by piece so that you can take good notes, and when you come back to it, hopefully it'll make sense when you read your notes. So here I am in Chrome. I'm just going to right click or two finger click on my Mac pad. I'm going to go to inspect, and I'm going to come over here to console, and I like having mine down here. I like having all of my development down on the bottom, and I like having the window up on top. I know some people have it on the right. I don't like that. If you want to move yours down on the bottom, you can click the little triple dot right here, and you can choose this rectangle over rectangle, and it'll give you the one that I'm on. All right. I'm going to paste my code in here, and I don't know how well I did with this, but we're sure going to find out and see if it works. Promise pending. What do you know? I got some data back. So this right here, this has to be on every, this right here has to be in every call. You have to have the verification token to know, to tell iMIS that you're logged in. If you don't have this, it'll come back and it'll tell you you're not authorized to make the API call. So you have to have that string no matter what. This options block of text right here, just is telling the API what we're wanting to do. We're wanting to get data. It's telling it that we're going to use JSON, JSON, and that's how this data is laid out. It's a special type of encoding that's laid out, or a special type of encoding where the data is laid out, and it uses this hierarchical feature using these squirrely brackets, right? And when you're looking at this data, for example, if I copy this object, I just right-clicked on it, and I'm going to go to Copy Object, and I come over here and I paste it down below. This is what it looks like. If we were to just put all of it in the editor and take a peek at it, you can see here, this is what the data looks like. And this format of data is what the API expects. You have to be able to use JSON data to get data out and JSON data when you're funneling the data back in, all right? I'll leave this down here for a second because we may come back to it in a little bit, but you can see all the data that's in there in a string format, all right? This fetch is just a JavaScript mechanism to pull data out of an API, and what I've done here is I've used xSource, which is our requested product code right there. I've just appended it to the end so that when it calls it, it's calling this endpoint with that product code at the very end. It's just adding it to the very end. This then takes the response, throws it out on the screen, and if there would have been an error, it would have thrown it back to me here in this little catch statement. All right. So that's your crash course and how this works. This format right here is the standard format to get anything out of iMIS. So if you take a copy of this little piece of code right here, from there down, you can modify that to get to any endpoint inside of iMIS, and if you can find the data in there, it will give it back to you. Now, sometimes you have to give it more than just this parameter here. Sometimes you have to say like item ID equals, and all of that stuff is in the API programmer interface help files for developer.imis.com. Okay, so we're going to expedite this process here just a little bit. I'm going to jump over to this other one. When we come over here back to my master, this is the code we just executed. Now, what I've done here is I've done a couple of, I've daisy-chained a couple of these commands. So I'm planning on just adding a Z to the end of my new product code. So, for example, if I have COMMP12 as a product, my new product code is going to be COMMPZ as the new product code. And I know that going in because that's the methodology that I'm choosing. Now when we get into the IQA, maybe we want to change it and you want to leave a little blank where you can fill in the ID and use it instead. And I'll show you how to do that. But what I've done here is I've embedded another fetch command inside of the one that I just did. So the one that I showed you gets the data. But what I want it to do is I want it to get the data, I want it to create the new name and immediately throw it back into the database. I just want to copy it. I'll deal with editing things afterwards, but right now I just want to copy the product the way that it is. So what I'm saying in here is this little piece right here. As part of the response of getting the data back, I want to go ahead and change it and write it immediately back to the iMIS database. So I'll show you how this works. I'm going to grab this piece of code. We're going to go back over to the inspector, and we're going to paste it in here. Let me clear that off so that we have a brand new little area to work in here. I'm going to change this to COMPZ because I've already got one out there that I've created. So we're going to use my copy of the original, and then we're going to create a ZZ duplicate, and that ZZ one will show you that everything is getting copied across, okay? So I'm going to go look for COMP12Z. So if I go back over here to my billing products, I'm going to see that I've got a COMMP12Z right there. You can see that. And when I go into this, it was a copy of the original, and I've added some special pricing because this is the thing that takes the time. When you've got 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 10 custom pricing rules here, it takes a long time to go from product to product to product to add those pricing rules, right? So here is the one we're gonna end up cloning right here. When I go back, I'm going to go back to this so we can see the dashboard. When I run this piece of code, what it's going to do is exactly the first thing that we saw. It's going to start by looking for the COMMP12Z code. It's going to go ahead and create the destination code by adding another Z to the end of it, so it's going to be 12ZZ by the time we're done with the copy. It's going to go ahead and get this first copy, and if it's successful, it's going to go ahead and rename it and then immediately turn right back around and save it back out into the database. That's what this is doing right here. So if I hit enter on this, you can see I've got a little bit of feedback here. And if I click refresh now on my screen, you'll see that I now have a COMMP12ZZ code. Because all I did was I told the API, take this one, load it, and immediately change the name and copy it right back. And you'll see that everything that's here is exactly the same as it was. It's just got an extra Z on the end. All the pricing is the same, right? Now, what are we missing here? The special pricing, right? Because that happens to be a completely different API call. So just like we did with the product code, we now have to do the same thing with the pricing. So again, save you a little bit of time. I've got that code right here. So here is the code to get the pricing. Again, we're doing the exact same steps we did before. We're getting the verification token to prove that we're logged in. We're going to create a method that's a get because we're reading data out of the API. We've got the header information, which is identical. This code is identical between both calls. There's no difference between them. Here, I have the fetch command right here. This is the endpoint, API item price, and then we have to send the item ID that we're looking for in this API call. So we're going to send the item ID in this API call. It's going to go and see if it gets a response. If it gets a JSON response and not an error, it's going to keep going down. The next thing that it's going to do is it's going to go look at the response that came in. It's going to go find the part of the response that we need, which is that right there, that value. And it's going to end up replacing all of my COMMP12Z values with COMMP12ZZ. And then it's going to show me that string on screen so that I can show it to you. So if I go to run this right now, oops, come back here. If I go to run this right now in my inspector, it's going to go look at the special pricing rules, and it's going to display them on screen for us. We're going to go copy the object and come over here, and we're going to paste it in here. So this is basic, fluff information and whatnot, header information. This then is showing me the pricing that I had. So here's the special pricing rules. The standard price was $200. And then when I come over here, that's for the non-member, right? Here's the non-member, and there's the non-member product code. You can see it in there. There's the $200 price in US dollars. And then when I come down here, there's dues affiliate member pricing. $200 for people that have a status of active, $400 for people that have a status of inactive. So this is then the pricing, the special pricing. And if we go back into iMIS and we click on this, we can see here. Well, let's go into the affiliate member one because this was the more complex of the two. So here's the affiliate pricing, mapping the exact property value to the prices using CS contact status. People who are active get 200, people who are inactive get 400. And if you come back here to the data and look at this, you can see right here, dues, affiliate member, calculation type 3 happens to be the third radio button, right? CS contact is the source, status is the property, which you see right here. And then as you come down, you can see there's the A and the 200 and the I and the 400. A 200, I 400, you see how it's doing all that, right? We're just grabbing the data out of the API. So now we know that we have the proper JavaScript to pull the pricing right here. The only other thing that we have left to do is to insert the pricing now back into the database, just like we did the product code. So if we go back and look at our products, and we go into our ZZ code, this is our copy that we're making, and this is the one that we're working with right here. Here's our ZZ code. You can see that we have no special pricing at all. There's nothing. So I'm going to go back over and grab this last piece of JavaScript, and we'll make certain that you guys have this in your follow-up materials for this class. I'm going to go copy that, and I'm basically just going to say, go throw the stuff back into the pricing rule using the new, or go into the new pricing rules table using the new product ID. So I'm going to come back here, and I'm just going to throw that in. I got to go, actually, I have to go get it. Remember, I just refreshed the screen. Anytime you refresh the screen, that's the thing you got to remember if you're in the inspector. If you go from page to page or you refresh your screen, you got to go rerun that query. So there's my query again to get the data. Now I'm going to turn right back around and I'm going to throw it back into the system. And right here you can see it gave me a response code. So if I go back now, if I refresh my screen and I go back into my ZZ copy, I'm expecting to see the pricing, the special pricing rules there now, because I copied them off the one and I added them to the other, and sure enough, there they are. Didn't have to go through the process of adding all of those one by one by one by one by one, right? So now the purpose that we're going to fulfill on the rest of this training is, now that you've kind of seen and you've worked through the individual pieces in your Chrome inspector window or whatever inspector you're using, how do we then tie these all into an IQA with buttons and things like that, right? Because like ideally, it'd be nice to be able to see a list of all of our product codes and then to maybe key in the new ID next to it, because maybe we don't want it to be as simple as just adding a Z to the end of it, right? Maybe we want to be able to say, give me the new ID and then hit a button and have it clone the product code and then have it automatically move the pricing over. Or maybe we want that to be two separate steps. Maybe we want to clone the product and then clone the pricing separately, because possibly we want to clone pricing between other products that we already have, that already exist, and we don't want to create the product code to do it. That's a thought. It's a possibility. Let's walk into tying these things now into an IQA, all right? So the first thing that we want to do is we want to prepare our JavaScript. So we've got our JavaScript here, and what we have is we have a source and a destination, and then we have this code right here that runs to clone the product right there. So what I want to do is I'm going to turn this into a function that allows me to give it the source and maybe give it the destination, and then have the function do the work for me. All right. Now, a function, if you're not familiar with a function, maybe from your old algebra days or from calculus, years gone by, you may remember, a function is a section of processing that returns a standard value. A lot of times it'll return true or false. Sometimes it can actually return the calculation that happened inside the function. But what we want to do today is we just want this function to do something for us. We want to send it two parameters, have it go and do something, and then send us back a result, all right? So I'm going to grab this piece of code right here. because that's the one that we need to turn into a function. Now, if you've never used ChatGPT to do this, you could. ChatGPT happens to be a pretty cool little tool to go through the process of converting stuff if you don't know how to do it. So you might want to become familiar with ChatGPT and use it, and I'll show you how to do it here, just so you can see how it would actually work. Maybe you go here and you say this: I have some JavaScript code that I need to turn into a function so that I can call it from an on-screen query later on. Here's the code. All right. Now, what do we want? We need to send it the source and the destination, and we want it to return back to us the payload. All right. So, just so we have something to show, I would like to provide the X source and X destination as parameters, and I would like to see the X payload as the return value. Here's the code. Please produce the JavaScript equivalent. And if you misspell, it's okay. It'll change it. It'll fix it. And I'm just going to paste my code in there, and I'm going to tell it to run. So what it's going to do is it's going to take the code that I'm giving it, and it's going to try to interpret this based on my request. And I was being fairly verbose, telling it exactly what I wanted. Now here's what it's giving me back. It's giving me process legacy billing as a function with X source and X destination as the parameters, which is what I said I wanted. It's taking my JavaScript, it's fetching, it's updating the string, logging the response on screen, turning right back around and sending it back. And then it's giving me the X payload as the return, which is exactly what I told ChatGPT I wanted. I'm just going to click that little copy right there. I'm going to come back over here, and now I'm going to try to use this function to see if it works. So I'm going to tell it that I want to, so I'm just going to paste and copy right now. That just loads the function into memory. That's all that it did. Now I need to run the function. The function is called process legacy billing. So I'm going to grab that. And in parentheses, I'm going to give it as a string, meaning in quotes, the first product code that I want to clone. And we had the COMMP12, I think is what we were using before. Maybe for this purpose, we'll go find a different one just so you can see that it's doing something different. Let's do COMMP36. How about that? So let me, I refreshed my screen. I've got to go reload my function. COMMP36. And I want to call this Bucks product or Bucks prod. How about that? So I've got the function. I'm going to try to see if ChatGPT did what it's supposed to do, because if it did, it's going to take comp36 and it's going to copy it and move it into Bucks prod. So no errors. If I hit refresh, I get Bucks prod. So we can tell now that we've got a feature, or a function, I should say, that does exactly what we want. So if we can create an IQA that allows us to feed it the source product and the destination code, now all we got to do is hook that up to a button and we're ready to go. So let's go create an IQA. I'm going to grab this function right here. I'm going to go throw it over on a new window in my Visual Studio Code. All right. Let's go create an IQA together. I'm going to pull this all the way down. So we go to Rise, IQA. I'm going to open it in another tab so that I don't lose where I'm at. We're going to put this in the My Staff folder just for kicks and grins. And let's just create a folder called, how about that? Queries for dashboard functions. Let's just do it. All right, so if we go inside here, we're going to create a brand new query, and we're going to look at the products table. We're going to go grab the products table. And really all we need here is the product code. Let's see here. Okay, let's do a refresh and let's save it. And then we're going to run. Okay, so here we are. We now have a basic query that we can use. Now, what I would like to do is have a column right here that allows me to enter the code that I want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here to display. I'm going to go down here into my SQL expression. I'm just going to put two quotes, or if you want to put "and" in a NBSP, which is a non-breaking space, you can do that. And you're going to say new code. When I run that now, I've got a column where I can put something, right? What I want in there, though, is I really want a text box. Now, maybe you don't know how to create a text box. So let's go to ChatGPT and tell it what we want. I need the HTML for a text box that only allows for uppercase characters and no punctuation except for underscores and dashes. So the reason why I'm saying that is because everything that we do inside of IQA has to be in Microsoft SQL. Microsoft SQL is known as TSQL. So we're going to see if ChatGPT can give me a TSQL string that I can just paste in there. Let's find out what happens. So here's what it's giving me. Let's just copy it and throw it in there and see what happens. Well, look at that. We need a button over here that says the product code and the new code, right? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go create a button that's in my, I'm going to hit save before I forget anything here. I'm going to go create a button down here. And I'm going to do it like this. I'm going to create a span tag. Class equals text button. You'll notice that I used single quote on the outside when I started this, and I'm using double quotes on the inside. On click, I want to tell it to go do my process legacy billing function. And I want to give it the two parameters. But right now I'm just going to close off and I'm going to make certain that the button looks pretty much like I'm expecting. So I'm going to be, I'll call this clone product. And I'm going to shut it off and we're going to call this space for the column title heading. So now I've got a button in my IQA. So now I've got a place to key my new product code. I've got a place to clone the product. I already know what the existing product is. So far we're getting pretty close. Now the next thing I need to do is tell it in the button that this is the first code and this is the second code. So that's what we're going to do next. So what we do in the feature, in our coding here is we say, we're going to give it two parameters. So inside here, we need a quote and a double quote and a double quote, just like that. Except what we've got now is this conflict. because we have the double quote here and the double quote here, we can't put double quotes on the inside, right? And I'm already using the single quote here and the single quote here. So the way that you get around that is in SQL, you can put single quotes inside of single quotes by doing two single quotes. So if I do double single quote and then double single quote, that'll actually convert via TSQL as a single quote inside the query. And I'll show you how that works in a minute. So inside of this right here, I now need to reference the IQA object that I'm in, and I need the value that's displayed. I'm going to leave this just the way that it is, and I'm going to put placeholders in here. There and there. Just for now. And I'm going to go ahead and save this and run it just so you can see what it looks like. Because what I have to do in that button is I have to say, give me on this row, give me that value and give me this value inside of that. If I look at what's being produced here for this code inside of my IQA, you can see that by the time it converts from TSQL into HTML, it's giving me legitimate. And here's the on click. And you can see those double single quotes are now just treated as individuals. So I've got a double quote out here, single quotes on the inside, and double quote on the outside. This is a fully and properly formed SQL or a function statement. So what I need now is something that points back over here to get this value right there, and then this value right here. All right. Now, getting the first value is not hard because that's actually a field, right? It's the product code field. So if we come back over to our IQA and we're looking at this, right here, all we have to do is put product code. Well, we already have the product code field, and if we come over to our summary tab, we can look and we can see, there it is right there. I'm going to just grab this from bracket to bracket right there, copy. Go to back to my display, and right here, I'm going to double click on the value that I don't want. I need to replace that value with the one that I do. Now, because it's a field, I have to concatenate that, which means I've got to put quote plus plus quote. And I'm going to do that before I ever put the parameter in. I'm going to do a single quote plus plus single quote. And now I know that inside of that plus, I need to paste my product code. So I've got 3 individual single quotes here. Now, what this is saying is, give me a single quote TSQL interpretive engine. When you see this, give me a single quote. And then it's going to see this and it's going to say, oh, I started this string over here with a single quote. I am now no longer inside the string. I'm outside the string. It's going to concatenate. Oops, come back here. It's going to concatenate the value of product code in the middle. It's going to then restart the string, and then it's going to give me a single quote character again. So if I run this now and I inspect it, you can see my code, my product code is now my first parameter. I still, though, have to now do the second one. Well, this does not exist. That value right there does not exist in the database. It's only in the browser. I can't use a SQL string to get the second code because it doesn't exist in the database yet. I have to use JavaScript to pull this value out of this row. All right. So here is where a little forethought and a little planning will help you. On my logic right here, every time we have HTML, we can assign it an ID. All right. I'm going to give this right here, I'm going to give this an ID. And I'm going to put it in double quotes, and this is going to be my ID. I'm just putting something there like I did before so that I have something that I can see. If I run this right now, what I'm going to see is that every one of these has the same ID val. And if we come down here to the next button or the next input, you see it's the same one, ID val. Well, that's not going to do us any good. What we want is a unique value for each one of these boxes so that we can easily get to it. What if I were to use the product code as the ID for each row? If I did that, it would make it easy for me to know the value of that box because I know what the product code for the row is already, and I know that I'm only allowed to have one product code for any given row. So let's see here. What if I were to say quote plus plus quote, because I started with a single quote, I've got to do the same thing here. What if I were to say this and just put the product code there just like I did down below? Well, when I run it now, what do I get? When I look at these, now the pretest has an ID of pretest. And this SPR-conf SSRS product has an ID of SPR-conf / SSRS. So now I have an ID that's specific to the row. And if I put in like here, buck 2, let's say I put that value in there. If I go look for that ID and I tell it to give me the value for that ID, let me go over to the console here. Pretest is the name of the ID. I'm just going to go grab a copy of it. I'm going to come down here and in JavaScript, I'm going to say jQuery. Now, I don't know if this will be good enough to get it for me or not. Oops, didn't put jQuery. See, it sees it. It sees that it's an input. Right there. Now I know the value of that box. So if I take this string right here and I make this my second parameter, what about this one here? Let's see if it works. I'm concerned about that /. I don't know if that / is going to give me a hard time or not, but we're going to give it a shot. Yeah, see, it didn't like that. So we're going to have to do something about these /. We can't have that. We'll probably turn them into underscores or something like that. All right. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go over to our define, and we're going to make light lifting out of this. We're going to say that the ID is replace, comma, / with comma underscore, just like that. So that anytime we have a /, it just replaces it. So if I run this now and I go buck 3 and I go look for this one, it found it. There it is. So that works. So now we've got a process that works for all of these because you only ever have a / in the product code. Now we have a process that works for all of them. It's just now a matter of putting the final product inside of our button. So we know this language right there is what we want. We just want to use the modified version of that product code and throw it in the button. So let's go do it. So we go back over here to define. I'm going to squeeze this down a little smidgen. And we come over here. That blank 2, actually, we need to remember single quote plus plus single quote. And we're going to come back here. We're going to throw that code inside there. And now I'm going to look at that. And I'm asking the question, do I want that code to be interpreted by TSQL, or do I want it to be the browser? And the answer is, I want it to be the browser. I don't want that to be, if I go to run this code right now, this is going to cause TSQL to error because jQuery is not part of the TSQL language. This has to interpret locally. This right here, from here over to here, is interpreting on the server. But this, from here to here, has to interpret locally on the browser. In absolute honesty, this is the part that I think becomes the trickiest, because you're having to think kind of in 3 layers. You're having to think, what does TSQL expect to create when it goes through the Microsoft SQL Server engine? You have to think, what does JavaScript expect to see from that? And then you think, what is the browser going to do with it when you're done, right? So as it sits right now, this is not going to work. So what we've got to figure out is, how can we get that other parameter in this little space right here? All right. So I cheated, and I've got the code right here. I'm going to expand this, and then we'll talk it through. So what we have to do is, inside this, because this is creating the HTML. So this right here is the HTML that's going to be displayed inside that button. Inside the HTML, we're giving it, from here to here, is a value from the SQL Server that's inside of quotes. And we've said there's a single quote, and then starting from here to here, it gives us the TSQL value of the product code, and then it puts another single quote around it. So that's how we got our first one. But here, we just need to give it the JavaScript to get to the ID of the same product code. So we're using the exact same logic we did before about replacing the slash with the underscore, and we're putting that right in here, and we're telling it, give us that value. That's what we're doing. So you'll see here, I've got the double right there, which TSQL is going to interpret and give me a single quote, a pound sign, and then TSQL is going to shut off, while this part then ends up executing right here, which is the replace value to take the slash out of the product code. Then it's going to turn TSQL back off again and give me another single quote, and then give me the val for the JavaScript. So this is a blending of TSQL, HTML, and JavaScript all in the same place. That's the trickiest part right there, is getting that piece done. So when we run this now and we look at this button, what we see is we've got buck2, which is the product code, buck2, which is the ID. Let's go down to another one. Here's one here. Let's look at this one here. Let's see. I'm going to stick something in there. So FR510K10K right here, this one. Let's go take a look at this one. Inspect. We've got the button right here. We've got the FR. This is the actual product code. We want that to be the actual product code. This then, it's converting that slash into an underscore, and it's saying, go find that. And if you were to run this piece of code all by itself right here, that's the JavaScript piece, and you were to do that at the console, you're going to get the value that's inside. So now we've got a button that works. So the next thing we're going to do to safeguard ourselves is, we're going to say we don't want anything that's not dues, because the last thing we need to do right now is try to clone a meeting and change it from one naming convention to another. You could, if you wanted to go through the rest of the process, you could actually use this code and you could do that, but we're not going to. So we're going to go over to the product type. We're going to set the product type filter. We're going to say that it's dues only, because that's just what we're trying to do today. Product type, we're going to say it's dues. And dues are simple because dues don't have the prefix like that. There we go. So there we have all of these. So let's give this a shot, and we have to put this on a page, and then we'll give it a try and see how it flows. All right. So we're going to save it. We're going to go throw this on a content page. We're going to go down here, give it the query that we just did, which I think we put in my staff. Queries for dashboard functions, there's that. We're going to say OK, and then save and publish. So now that we've got it on a page, we're going to go put the JavaScript out on this page as well. So I got it out there. I'm going to go add an HTML IPart. And I'm going to go down here. I'm going to click the little button that, where did it go? Hello. There it is. We're going to say JavaScript. We're going to go into the HTML mode, and we're going to go grab the JavaScript that we just, let's see here, where is it at? Nope. What did I do with it? Well, I'll go grab it out of the ChatGPT because it's over here anyway. Right here, copy. We're going to do this, script and /script. Get in the habit of doing the first one and the last one at the same time. We're just going to paste it in there. There it is. Process, billing, source, destination, right there. Hit OK. And save and publish. That should be, I think, all we need to test this out. Let's make sure that it runs. All right, here we go. The time will tell. COM-P24. Let's find out if we can do it. COM-P24 right there, and we want to call this Buck. Yes. How about that? I don't have anything telling me whether it was successful or not. We didn't put any kind of a prompt on there, like change the button green if it's a good thing or red if it's a bad thing. You can do that. But if we go back here, back to billing products, let's go see if we've got a Buck. There it is, Buck yes. So you can see that it's not that hard to do this. And once you've done this a few times, it gets easier. So what you can do now is you can, in your query, you can give your query button like a common name, just like you did your function box, right? So for example, right here on my button, I've got this. I can give this ID just like I've got this up here as an ID. I can do ID just like that. I'm just going to copy that straight down to here. And I'm going to make this ID equals BTN underscore. So now the button underscore product code is the ID of the button. And what I can say is that when I can go back, I can just say save here, and I'll show you that it worked. Refresh. If I right click on one of these, right here, you can see now I've got an ID on my button, right, that matches the product code. What I can do is I can say when this is successful, find the button with the same name as the ID of parameter and turn it red. So watch this. So if I go back to my JavaScript, maybe what we'll actually do is have ChatGPT do it for us, because this doesn't have the then response. So let's go do it that way. I'm going to go grab this. I'm going to say in this code, when the final API call is successful, find the span tag that is prefixed with BTN underscore and has the same name as the X destination, and turn the background green if the final API call is successful, and turn it red if it is not. Just like that. Let's see if it works. Come back over here. We do between the span or between the script tags. Delete it to make certain that all we have is script left. Paste in the new SQL or the new JavaScript. Save and publish. Let's see if it does it. So if I do one of these now, I'll show you here. Buck 12. When I hit it, ta-da! It does it, right? Now, to show that it does red also, let's try here. If I do $1.12 again, it should give me red this time because why? $1.12 already exists and it couldn't create it. So this is now done. If you want to go ahead and create the button for cloning the pricing, it's not hard. Let's just do it real quick. So we're going to go grab the button, the language, I should say here, for the button that we've already done. All of that code, we're just going to paste it down here, and we're going to say clone pricing. And we'll add that. So this one is, let's see, we're going to call this CLN button, replace, and the product code. And then we're going to call this process legacy pricing instead of legacy billing. And the rest of that, I think, is good. Clone pricing. So this right here is the piece that we need. Let's hit save. We're going to go over here to ChatGPT and do exactly what we did before. So we're going to say, I need a function called that takes one parameter. Let me go grab the code that we've used to this point. So here is the initial code. Well, no, actually, we want 2 parameters, don't we? That takes 2 parameters. X source and X destination. All right. So let's let it create it. And what we're going to do then is we're going to go grab that other piece of code, because this is the copy function, right? We're going to come back here and we're going to say, thank you. And we're going to have it weave those two functions together. So it's going to go through the process of doing the get. It's going to try. If the response is not okay, it's going to say that it failed. Otherwise, it's going to go ahead and get the payload. It's going to make an attempt at doing a copy of the code, right? So then here, remember the button for this one was CNLBTN underscore right there. So we're going to tell it, can't type. And we'll let it do its thing. And when we're done, we should end up with a function that we can just copy and paste. We've already got this. That part's done. We've already got the function. That part's done. Let's save this. And then let's go over to our content. And we're going to go add this to our JavaScript part. We're just going to go, I like keeping my JavaScript blocks separate. So I'm going to do exactly what I did before. And there we have it. So we should, I think, be good to go. Let's give it a shot and see. All right. So, well, we better refresh. Hang on. We better refresh. Get that new code loaded in here. Don't want to do it too quick here. There we go. We got clone product and clone pricing. Let's see if we got this right. Let's call this $1.22. I'm going to clone the product first, and I'm going to clone the pricing next. It says that it did it. Let's go look and see if we go to the billing product and we go find $1.22. There's $1.22, and there's the pricing. So there you go. The whole thing, not hard. Once you get the first one done, the other one's easy, right? Thanks for joining us. I hope that you enjoyed this whole process today. I hope that you found this useful. You may have to go back and watch it again just to take extra notes. We'll make certain that you have all these. I did use some AI in this just to show you how useful it can be. There is some consideration about perhaps in Nashville doing an AI class and that I may get the chance to lead. So if you think that's interesting or you'd be fascinated by that, how to use AI in developing more code with iMIS, let Michelle know your thoughts on that. And if we get enough votes on that, maybe we'll see it happen. All right. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll talk to you here in just a few seconds as we debrief after the training.